Welcome everyone. My name is KOP and my YouTube channel is called King KOP. So dear Kenyans, I come in peace and may peace be with you all whenever you are enduring this tough economy. Like they say, you can always run, but you can never hide. I have been avoiding to speak about politics in public, but today there is something serious I must reveal to the public. Something concerning the last year's election between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. Particularly, I want to address the legitimacy of William Ruto's presidency, so that Kenyans may know the truth once and for all. So dear Kenyans, sit tight, pay attention, and follow with me. Raila Odinga maintains that the election was rigged, while William Ruto says he won the election fairly. Raila Odinga maintains that the servers must be opened, while Ruto insists that the servers were open and remained open for everyone, including the election observers, to be able to see the results as they were streaming in. Raila Odinga insists that the presidency of William Ruto is illegitimate, while Ruto maintains that he is the legitimate president of the Republic of Kenya. My dear Kenyans, between Raila Odinga and William Ruto, who is telling us the truth? I mean, we saw how the Supreme Court, CJ Martha Koome, made a ruling over the presidential election petition between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. My question is, even if Ruto won the election fairly, was the CJ right to tell Kenyans that Raila Odinga's claims in the petitions were hot air? My take is, CJ Martha Koome and co of the apex court of this country disgraced the judicial morals of this nation. The Supreme Court injured the confidence of the public to the judicial system of this nation. And while Kenyans were still recovering from the previous injury, CJ Martha Koome and co of the Supreme Court adds another heart attack to the souls of Kenyans by approving and promoting homosexuality to our beloved nation. The Bible rebukes homosexuality in Leviticus chapter 20 verse 13, and I will read it for you. If there is a man who will lie with a male as those who lie with a woman, both of them have committed a detestable act. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood guiltiness is upon them. You can also refer that in Romans chapter 1 verse 27. Dear Kenyans, how will we trust the courts with our lives and well-being again? Someone to explain to me how a nation should recover from this. Anyway, I will come back to CJ, Koome and high moral rulings later. Back to why we are here. As I was saying before, the immoral utterances of the CJ, Martha Koome, the legitimacy of the presidency, William Samuel Ruto, the high taxes and the high cost of living we are experiencing today should be treated with the seriousness they deserve. My worry is, since Ruto won the elections on 9th August 2022, all the promises he made to Kenyans concerning reducing the cost of life during his campaigns, where he promised to reduce the cost of unga, sugar, salt, bread, milk, all the basic commodities, electricity, water, taxes generally, none of these promises have been actualized. Instead, life has become more and more unbearable to us, the common mwananchi and mama mboga. Allow me to ask this question up to that point. Who was being fooled during campaigns? Was it Raila Odinga? Was it the poor Kenyans, foolish Kenyan voters, the mama mbogas, the boda guys? I want to remind His Excellency President William Ruto that however stupid people may be, they can be fooled during campaigns, but hunger can never fool the stomachs. Hunger bites the stomach that you can never fail to give it food. And when millions of Kenyans will lack food on their table, that is when you will come to agree with me, Mr. President. So, could it be that the presidency of Dr. Ruto is for sure illegitimate the way Raila Odinga puts it? Or actually, there was a hand of God in Ruto's election win? I say this because we are told in the book of Romans chapter 13 verse 1 to 2 that there is no authority except from God. And those that exist have been instituted by God. Allow me read the verse for you so that you agree with me. Romans chapter 13 verse 1 to 2. Verse 1. Let every person Be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Verse 2. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists that God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. Hold it there. I know many of you will question how from God, yet he stole the election. Some will argue that God do not promote stealing of election to get into power. Before you argue and make a fool of yourself, let me tell you briefly about the story of King David and his son Absalom. God told King David that because you slept with Uriah's wife, one of your many sons will overthrow you from your throne and also disgrace you by sleeping with your wives in public as your punishment. Found in 2 Samuel and 1 Kings. So because God wanted to punish King David for his evil action, he allowed his son Absalom to take over from King David by overthrowing him. So did God approve of the rulership of Absalom by overthrowing his father King David? Yes. God approved of the rulership of Absalom for a reason, which is to punish King David. So does God approves the presidency of William Samuel Ruto? Yes, because he's already sitting in that office, irrespective of how he got into that office. Believe me, if God did not want Ruto to win the presidency, he could have not won that election. So ours is to humble ourselves, to work with the governing authority that God has appointed as stated by the Bible, unless we want to bring judgment upon ourselves. I say all this because the Bible tells us in 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 19 to 20. Verse 19 says, as Saul was speaking to the priest, the confusion in the Philistine camp kept getting worse. So Saul said to him, there is no time to consult the Lord. Verse 20. Then King Saul and his men marched into the battle against the Philistines, who were fighting each other in complete confusion. I want you to take note of the confusion here. That there was confusion all over the Philistine camp to an extent that they were killing each other. My question is, how did that confusion come about? The confusion was brought about by God so that King Saul and the Israelites could defeat the Philistines. My dear Kenyans, believe it or not, it is this kind of confusion that we witnessed last year in Azimio camp, when there were claims that Azimio agents were not paid, or rather were being bribed by Ruto's camp. And at some point, Junet and Joe were accused of squandering the money that was meant to pay the Azimio agents. I believe that anyone can now see the similarity between the confusion in the Philistine camp and that which was in the Azimio camp. If you agree with me that these confusions are similar, yet the confusion in the Philistine camp was brought about by God, then we can now conclude confidently that the confusion that was in Azimio camp was brought about by God as well to assist Ruto win the election. So will I be right to say that whatever the rigging claims that Ruto is being accused of was a hand of God to assist Ruto win the elections? Because if anything, the Azimio camp had the same chances as UDA to rig the elections, as they were also being supported by the sitting president Uhuru Kenyatta. And with all due respect, the last year election was a fair play to both the contesting camps, UDA and the Azimio, because they were all being supported by the same government. A thing that has never happened in the history of this country since independence. And in this case, God is the only one who knows why he allowed Ruto to win the election instead of Raila. But the Bible also tells us that whenever Israelites turned away from God, stopped following his commands, and also stopped worshiping him, but instead worshiped idols, God rejected them, made them suffer, handed them over to those who looted their property. God let the emperor of Assyria take Israelites into slavery and rule over them away from their land. That is in 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 20 to 24. Then God later used King Hezekiah to save the Israelites from captivity because Hezekiah was upright with God. 2 Kings chapter 18 and chapter 19. The Bible also says that if God wanted to save his people from Israel, he would send them a prophet to warn them to change their evil ways so that God will not destroy them. For example, God sent Jonah to go to Nineveh to warn the people of Nineveh to stop sinning, or else If they persist with their evil ways, God will have to destroy Nineveh. So before we start blaming anyone on who won the election fairly, we the people should change our evil ways and turn back to God. How many people sleep with other people's wives and no one cares? How many pastors sleep with people's wives and no one cares? How many couples divorce every day and no one cares? How many leaders and bosses sleep with their juniors' wives and no one cares? How many men sleep with other men and nobody cares? How many cases have we witnessed where people sleeping with animals and no one cares? How many daughters have we witnessed sleeping with their fathers and sons sleeping with their mothers and no one cares? How many people steal from the poor, take to the church and no one cares? Dear Kenyans, let us change our evil ways and turn back to the Lord. Who knows, maybe then the Lord shall have mercy on us and avert this fast approaching disaster of hunger and high taxes. Up to this point, I can confidently say that everything happens for a reason. And for sure, it is God who knows why Ruto won the elections and not Raila. I am saying all this because sometimes around October 2021, I had a dream that Ruto had won the elections and was sworn in at Kasarani Stadium in a very colorful ceremony. I hated that dream. I cursed the dream. And I did not want that dream to come true. But what happened? Believe me, sure to the dream, Ruto won the elections and the swearing in of William Ruto came to pass exactly the way I saw it in my dream. The colorful nature that I saw at Kasarani in the dream became a reality. I became a sad man and almost went into depression. I even became bitter with myself for having such a dream, yet I wanted Raila to win. So Kenyans, you will forgive me for this, but I am one of the Azimio fans who are still finding hard to believe that Ruto is indeed the person who won the election and is actually the president, despite the fact that I saw it in my dream prior to the election. Sometimes I thought if I shared the dream with the public and it went viral, then it would motivate people to vote for William Ruto. Yet I wanted Raila to win the elections. No wonder I shared the dream to only a handful of people. But again, if truly there was a hand of God in Ruto's win, why is it that even after Ruto was sworn into the office, life has since become more harder on the Mama Mboga today? Why? And yet Ruto promised to deliver Mama Mboga from the claws of poverty. Could it be that something went wrong? Or could it be that there is something that should be done? Or could it be that Raila is right after all by saying that Ruto illegitimately won the elections? This is a question I keep asking myself every day. And I believe each and every other Kenyan who is feeling the severity of this economy should join me in asking this question, including the president himself. The question should not only be asked by Raila Odinga and Eric Omondi. This is a question that should be asked by all of us as a nation, irrespective of whether you are a Luo, a Kikuyu, a Kalenjin, a Kamba, a Luya, a Kisii, a Meru, a Christian, or even a Muslim. When it comes to this matter, Wakenya tuweke ukabila na religion kando. Before things get out of control, Kenyans start dying like flies out of hunger. For example, in drought-stricken areas like Marsabit County, specifically Moyale, Kenyans and their animals are already dying because of hunger, yet we are here fighting each other. We need to address this problem as early as today, before this plague of hunger spread all over the country and start claiming lives due to lack of food in our homes. We have families, we have people who depend on us, we have mouths to feed, bills to pay, school fees and rents. But above all, we have a life to live. And if we don't talk now, we might perish. So today I have accepted that Ruto is indeed the President of the Republic of Kenya. And I believe at this point, every other Kenyan should join me in accepting that Ruto is indeed the President of the Republic of Kenya. Because then is when we can come together as a nation and know where this problem of high taxes and high cost of life is coming from and find a solution to it together as a nation. With my full knowledge that Ruto is indeed the legitimate President of the Republic of Kenya, I am ready to meet His Excellency the President, William Samoei Ruto, and tell him what he must do so that if indeed it is God who put him in that office, then it is the same God who will provide a solution to this problem of high taxation and high cost of life. And as long as it is God who legitimately put Ruto into presidency, There's nothing anyone can do about it, regardless of who you think you are. God himself, until God himself think otherwise. But if for sure it is not God who legitimately put Ruto into presidency, then I am afraid Ruto might face a lot of difficulties during his regime, and things might get even worse than what we have already known. I have a lot of information which I don't want to put to the public for now, because I know and I witnessed Dr. Ruto engaging in a lot of prayers during his campaigns. And I believe he usually seeks God's intervention to these problems whenever they arise, just the same way we saw him seek God during his campaigns last year. So, Mr. President, look for me, and look for me, and look for me with all. As the Kiswahili saying goes, mambo ni mengi na masaa ndio machache. Indeed, masaa ni machache, and I am positive that Mr. President is going to look for me. What we have to agree today is that leadership comes from God. And Ruto, being one of the leaders who have been with us in this country for a while now, has been chosen by God to be the president. This simply means God has a purpose for settling on Ruto to be the president besides Raila. If anything, being a president is not a child's play that someone can wake up to one day and decides that he's going to be the president without God's support the next day and end up becoming one. What I know as it stands today is that both Raila Odinga and William Ruto are anointed by God to be our leaders. And fighting them that, oh, I want to finish Raila or I want to finish Ruto will not be prudent. I will not even bring, and it will not bring any solution to the high cost of life we are experiencing today. But instead will bring God's judgment upon ourselves. Raila is anointed by God because the things he has done to this our beloved nation, irrespective of how he did them, makes him one of the anointed. Raila delivered Kenyans from dictatorship and is the father of multipartyism. Raila also struggled for and championed for Kenyans to have total freedom of speech. No ordinary man can achieve all this if it is not from God. Ruto is anointed by God because he has become the president of the Republic of Kenya. Irrespective of how he got into that position, no ordinary man can become the president if it is not from God. Anyone who is fighting Raila and Ruto will hurt themselves. But amid that fight, we the common mwananchi and mamambogas and the boda guys are the ones who will suffer more. And even the two leaders, Ruto and Raila, if they decide to fight today instead of solving problems amicably, it is us the common mwananchi who will suffer more. Kama wazee walivyosema, fahali wawili wakipigana, ni nyasi ndio huumia. So it is good to encourage leaders who are close confidant of these two leaders, to encourage them not to fight, but find an amicable way to solve problems that are affecting the common mwananchi. Because that is the only surest way that the common mwananchi will not suffer. And who knows, maybe it is at times like this that these leaders who are close confidant of Raila and Ruto were meant to be in those positions. If not for self-interest, but to serve the interests of the common mwananchi by ensuring that Raila and Ruto do not fight. Instead, work together to ensure Kenyans are cushioned from high taxes and hunger. But to those leaders around President Ruto and around Raila Odinga who do not want Ruto and Raila to work together because of self-interest, shame on you. We know you and we are marking you. Right now you are just busy with your stomachs. You have forgotten the mamamboga and the boda operators who voted for you. If things will go wrong and hunger to start killing Kenyans and the common mwananchi, the mamambogas, the boda operators, because you did not want Ruto and Raila to work together, you are greedy leaders and you don't deserve to lead anybody. But you can be sure Kenyans will come for you. Mamambogas will come for you. Boda operators will come for you. Kenyans will come to feed on your blood and you will have nowhere to hide. And with the common mwananchi, the mamambogas, the boda operators, the jobless, the students, the parents, and the collective Kenyans at large, we should not be afraid, but embrace courage and come out loud and in confidence, not to fight our leaders, but to tell them the truth and nothing but the truth, especially the president. For example, we can tell them that, look, Mr. President, or look, Mr. Raila, the more you keep fighting, sisi ndio tunaendelea kuumia. The more mnabishana, ndio the more gharama ya maisha inaendelea kupanda. Sana the president, acha kubishana na Raila. Give Kenyans solutions to the high cost of life. Prove yourself to Kenyans that you are the legitimate president of the Republic of Kenya by giving Kenyans solutions to high cost of life instead of these altercations between you and Raila. What will you benefit, Mr. President, if Kenyans start dying today out of anger? Because you are focused on fighting Raila instead of focusing on giving Kenyans solutions at the high cost of life. If you are not careful, Mr. President, people will see these high taxes in your regime as your gradual way of starting to oppress Kenyans. People will see it as a way to make Kenyans poor and turn them into beggars so that they have to worship you in order that they may get food. Remember, if that happens, it will be only for a while. But the same God who put you in that position today will see you as his competitor. And you know what God can do if you want him to remind you who God is. King Pharaoh can attest to this. Something that will be very unfortunate to your presidency, your legacy, and your children. In life, if life is getting unbearable, we should speak and not keep quiet, because we are the ones who will perish. If taxes are high, we should come out and speak the truth, because it is only the truth that can save us, and it is the same truth that can set us free. But you can be sure, if you fight these leaders anointed by God, you are the ones who will suffer, irrespective of who you think you are. To our young leaders, you have to be very careful about your actions, especially after pledging your loyalty to a particular leader. The Bible accepts that you tell anointed leader the truth, because telling the truth does not make you an enemy to the person you are telling the truth. And that is found in Galatians chapter 4 verse 16, which says, "So have I become your enemy by telling you the truth?" But the Bible demands respect for your leaders and never to fight them, which is even stated clearly in the Bible in Romans chapter 13 verse 1 to 2. And I will read that to you as well. Verse 1 says, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment." Also Hebrews chapter 13 verse 17, "Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your soul, as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be no advantage to you." With that in mind, we also know the story of King Saul, who was the first king of Israel. We know that King Saul wanted to kill King David. But there was no single time that King David tried to fight back King Saul, even after knowing that King Saul was determined to kill him. We can read this in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 24 verse 5 to 6. Verse 5 we say, "Afterward, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of his robe. He said to his men, 'The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lift my hand against him, for he is the anointed of the Lord.' This King David told his soldiers when he found Saul unaware sleeping in a cave, and never even tried to touch him, inasmuch as he had all the chances in the world to destroy King Saul that day. An anointed leader is not to be fought or to be resisted in any way, but can only be told the truth, because it is from the truth that he is going to offer good leadership to the people. And this is something that Raila and Ruto knows very well. I will not talk about how Raila knows this, but I will talk about how Ruto knows this, because he is the president. At some point, when Ruto was a member of parliament of Eldoret North, Moi kicked him out of Kanu so that he can go and seek a fresh mandate to become MP. Meanwhile, Moi had planted someone else to vie on a Kanu ticket to replace Ruto in parliament. Ruto campaigned and won against the sitting president's support. But no instance before the election and after the election did Ruto talk against Moi, his mentor na kiburi. Even during the sunset days of Mzee Moi, Ruto really tried very hard to look for Mzee Moi to wish him well, but unfortunately he never had the chance. This is something you all know and witness. This alone is a clear sign that Ruto hakukosea Moi, and in case if he did, then he had apologized and just wanted some piece of advice from his mentor or some kind of blessings. I talk about this because Jalango Juzi visited President Ruto at State House, which Raila had an issue with. Now, mi sina issue na Jalango going to State House. But niko na issue na how Jalango was unapologetic to his party leader, Raila Odinga. He should have kept quiet from the public, looked for Raila, his party leader, privately, who is also anointed by God like Ruto, apologized and explained to Baba why he had gone to State House. If Baba was still not satisfied, then it was now in Baba's position to decide to forgive him or kicking him out of the party. But as for Jalango, he was to stop there at that point, leave it to God to judge between the two of them, Raila and Jalango, who is right. So Jalango acted na kiburi. No wonder even me, whom I was inspired by Jalango's story from a fishmonger to a member of parliament, became sorry for him, his future leadership, and approach to political matters. Jalango invited God's punishment to himself for nothing. So as for me, going to State House is not wrong, because that State House is where solutions to problems facing Kenyans are being manufactured. State House is the house of the governing authority, as stated by the Bible. And therefore, no one should be denied a chance to visit the house of the governing authority if they feel they have a pressing issue that they want to discuss with the governing authority, which is found in Romans chapter 13 verse 1 to 2. If I had powers to come to State House without being blocked, I would have looked for you, Mr. President, privately. But because I know if I try looking for you privately, it will take ages to finally meet you, I have decided to go back public with this information so that you look for me. You know, if you want me, it will only take you 30 minutes before you reach me. So I did not have a choice, but going public was the only choice to get your attention to this matter, so that we can meet as soon as possible. And even to Baba, if I could just call you and hook up an appointment with you, I would have looked for you privately. But since I know reaching you is not very easy as well, I will be very happy if you also reach out to me so that we meet and have a cup of tea. There is a lot we need to share. People must know that out of respect to our leaders, there are things that you can share to them about them in public. But there are things you can only share with them privately, especially sensitive matters that might irritate them. When they give you a chance to meet them privately, then you are free to tell them without fear or favor, so that if it is upon them to decide whether they will heed or not. And that is why I have called upon Mr. President and Mr. Odinga. Otherwise, may the Almighty God be with you all as you seek to live in peace in these hard times. Thank you, Kenyans, for listening to me, and God bless you.